Energy is the silent language that communicates more than words ever could. In every interaction, whether it's subtle glances, tone of voice, or the way attention is distributed, energy reveals priorities, intentions, and underlying truths. While words can be carefully crafted, rehearsed, or even manipulated, energy cannot be faked over sustained periods. It seeps through gestures, choices, and presence in ways that cannot be easily controlled. When observing someone stoically, one begins to notice that energy, how it is given, withheld, or redirected, speaks volumes about where a person's focus truly lies. Consider the simple moments, the way someone leans into a conversation, the sparkle of engagement in their eyes, the consistency of their attention. These subtle indicators carry the weight of genuine interest and investment. In contrast, when energy drifts away, it leaves traces, slight delays in responses, divided attention, half-hearted engagement. A Stoic perspective teaches that these observations are not to be judged emotionally, but noted analytically as patterns that reveal deeper truths. Consistency in energy allocation is a signal, sporadic bursts of attention are noise. Over time, patterns crystallize into unmistakable clarity about what matters most to someone. Energy alignment is not merely about physical presence, it encompasses emotional and cognitive focus as well. Someone may be physically present but mentally elsewhere, their thoughts entangled in priorities that do not include the person observing. This misalignment creates subtle tension, a sense of distance that cannot be ignored. In relationships, whether personal or professional, energy directed elsewhere consistently demonstrates where the heart and mind are invested. Stoicism emphasizes observing without attachment, noting the divergence in energy without immediate reaction, allowing one to understand the reality without distortion. It is in the quiet, unspoken moments that energy reveals itself most clearly. Casual distractions, fleeting interest, or the tendency to disengage when interaction becomes routine are not random. They are consistent markers of focus shifting elsewhere. A person who truly prioritizes will show it through sustained attention, even when circumstances are inconvenient or effortful. Energy is the currency of intention, and how it is spent reflects values and choices. The observant mind recognizes that words, no matter how eloquent, cannot substitute for this fundamental truth. Another layer of energy alignment is the responsiveness to shared experiences. Those deeply invested contribute not only presence but also initiative. They reach out without prompting, remember details, and participate in moments that strengthen connection. Conversely, when energy is consistently absent in these shared spaces, it signals a gradual reallocation of interest. Stoic observation encourages detachment from personal interpretation of motives and instead focuses on the factual pattern where energy flows, commitment follows, where it wanes, priorities have shifted. Energy also manifests in subtle emotional cues: tone, laughter, empathy, patience. When someone's energy is aligned with you, these cues emerge effortlessly and naturally. When energy drifts elsewhere, emotional responsiveness diminishes, warmth becomes occasional, patience fades, and engagement feels conditional. Stoic philosophy suggests observing these shifts with equanimity, understanding that they are not necessarily about rejection, but about clarity of alignment. Recognizing where energy truly lies allows one to make informed decisions about how to respond, redirect focus, or adjust expectations. Ultimately, energy alignment over words is about listening to the unsaid, watching the unspoken, and trusting patterns rather than promises. It is the quiet truth that surfaces in repeated behavior, the invisible marker of genuine interest, investment, and priority. Those who are attuned to energy recognize its consistency as a more reliable guide than any verbal declaration, understanding that the presence or absence of directed attention is the clearest signal of where someone's heart and mind are truly engaged. Consistency is the lens through which intentions become visible. While words can be persuasive, rehearsed, or conveniently forgotten, actions carry the weight of authenticity, especially when repeated over time. One interaction, a single gesture, or a fleeting promise may feel meaningful in the moment, but it is the pattern of behavior that ultimately exposes true priorities. Stoicism teaches that reality is revealed not in appearances but in repeated, observable patterns. Consistency becomes clarity because it is difficult to fake sustained effort, attention, or care. When actions align over time, they offer undeniable evidence of intent. Conversely, inconsistency whispers truths that words often try to conceal, quietly revealing where commitment and focus are actually directed. Consider daily routines and habits small. Repeated actions accumulate to reveal character and priorities. Someone may claim dedication, interest, or care, yet the absence of follow-through or uneven engagement exposes a disconnect between words and reality. When gestures occur only sporadically, they become noise rather than signal. True consistency is measured not by grand acts or dramatic declarations, but by the steady, reliable patterns that occur even when unnoticed. It is the repeated effort in mundane moments, the attention given without fanfare, and the subtle follow-through that unveils genuine intention. Stoically observing these patterns removes the need for confrontation or interpretation. Reality presents itself through repetition. In relationships, consistency manifests in how attention, energy, and presence are distributed. Someone who values connection shows up not just in moments of excitement, but in the ordinary rhythms of life, when effort is inconvenient or when enthusiasm is low. Occasional gestures cannot substitute for a steady pattern of engagement because authenticity is cumulative. Over time, inconsistency becomes noticeable. Delayed responses, missed commitments, or uneven emotional investment create friction that cannot be explained away by isolated reassurances. Stoicism emphasizes observation without attachment, noting these patterns without judgment, allowing clarity to emerge naturally from repeated actions. Consistency also extends to emotional reliability. People reveal their intentions not only through deeds, but through the predictability of their responses. A pattern of patience, empathy, and attentiveness communicates respect and care. Erratic reactions or selective responsiveness signal misalignment of priorities. Words may attempt to justify absence or inattention, but they cannot change the observable record of behavior. Stoic philosophy values this detachment from interpretation of excuses, focusing instead on what is reliably demonstrated. Over time, repeated actions form a coherent narrative that no words can overwrite, providing insight into underlying truth. The cumulative nature of consistent behavior highlights the difference between temporary effort and enduring commitment. It is not the occasional grand gesture, but the repetition of small, intentional actions that solidifies trust and conveys authenticity. Inconsistencies, on the other hand, act as subtle indicators of shifting focus or misaligned priorities. The absence of regular effort or engagement often speaks louder than any explanation, revealing patterns that cannot be ignored. Observing these patterns allows one to see beyond surface-level reassurances, recognizing the reality that sustained action, or lack thereof, communicates most honestly. Consistency over time creates a framework of reliability and predictability. It reduces uncertainty, builds trust, and clarifies intentions without requiring constant validation or verbal affirmation. In contrast, inconsistency breeds doubt, tension, and ambiguity, quietly eroding confidence in words alone. The Stoic approach values noticing these patterns, understanding that repeated actions provide clarity where speech may obfuscate, and that truth is embedded in behavior rather than in promises. By observing the steady repetition of deeds, one discerns not just what is claimed, but what is real, revealing a fidelity to priorities and a transparency of intention that words alone rarely achieve. Presence is the unspoken measure of commitment, a language that transcends words and gestures. While messages, texts, or calls can convey attention in the short term, they cannot fully replicate the weight of true presence. Availability, both physical and emotional, communicates dedication, priority, and investment in a way that frequent communication alone never can. A Stoic perspective emphasizes the importance of observing reality through patterns rather than being swayed by fleeting appearances. The consistent presence of someone, in moments both significant and mundane, signals alignment of intentions, while absence, subtle, consistent, or unexplained, hints at shifting focus or priorities that words may attempt to mask. Physical presence is more than merely being in the same space. It is about engagement, participation, and the willingness to share experiences. Someone who is genuinely committed invests time and energy to be part of shared moments, even when convenience or desire is low. Conversely, sporadic appearances, missed opportunities, or a tendency to avoid shared spaces signal that attention and priorities are allocated elsewhere. Stoic observation teaches that these patterns are not to be interpreted emotionally at first glance, but noted as objective indicators of alignment. Actions and presence, repeated over time, reveal truths that messages alone cannot convey. Emotional presence is equally significant. Being present means offering attention, empathy, and responsiveness when interaction occurs. It is the act of listening, understanding, and engaging without distraction or reservation. In contrast, emotional absence manifests as detachment, lack of curiosity, or indifference during interactions. Someone may send messages frequently, but if those messages lack depth, attention, or emotional resonance, they do not reflect genuine engagement. A pattern of emotional absence, even in the midst of verbal communication, can reveal where loyalty and interest are truly invested. Observing these cues with Stoic equanimity allows one to see beyond the surface, understanding that consistent emotional presence is far more revealing than words alone. The subtle signals of absence can often be overlooked because they are quiet and gradual. Delays in response, avoidance of shared time, or fading participation in activities once prioritized all contribute to a pattern of disengagement. Stoicism teaches that noticing these subtle shifts without immediate judgment is key. Reality communicates through behavior, not explanation. Consistently noting where attention and presence are directed allows clarity to emerge. Presence, or the lack thereof, acts as a reliable barometer of intent. Availability also demonstrates prioritization. Those who are present make themselves accessible not out of obligation, but because engagement matters to them. In contrast, someone who is consistently unavailable, physically, emotionally, or mentally, signals through action that their focus lies elsewhere. Messages can be scheduled, rehearsed, or reactive, but sustained presence requires conscious effort and alignment of intention. Over time, repeated availability, or the lack of it, becomes the clearest indicator of where commitment truly resides. Ultimately, presence speaks louder than messages because it embodies action, intention, and consistency. While words may reassure or attempt to bridge distance, they cannot substitute for the undeniable truth of someone's physical and emotional availability. Stoic observation values noticing these realities without attachment, recognizing that presence reflects priorities, engagement, and investment in a manner that communication alone cannot replicate. And that absence, when patterned and persistent, quietly signals shifting focus and loyalty. Emotional investment is the invisible thread that binds attention, energy, and intention into meaningful connection. Unlike words, which can be crafted, rehearsed, or manipulated, genuine emotional engagement manifests in observable behaviors and subtle cues. True investment is transparent because it naturally reveals itself through curiosity, attentiveness, and initiative. Those who are truly present emotionally do not need to announce their care or loyalty. Their actions, reactions, and consistent attention make it evident. Stoicism emphasizes observing these signals objectively, understanding that patterns of emotional engagement, or the withdrawal thereof, provide clarity about priorities and intentions over time. Curiosity is one of the most reliable indicators of emotional investment. When someone is genuinely engaged, they seek to understand, explore, and connect. Questions are asked not out of obligation, but out of genuine interest in the experiences, thoughts, and feelings of another. Attention is given freely and consistently, demonstrating that the person values insight, understanding, and connection. Lack of curiosity, on the other hand, often reveals withdrawal before words can. When engagement diminishes, questions become perfunctory, responses lose depth, and the eagerness to connect fades. These subtle shifts, when observed over time, speak louder than any reassurances, signaling the quiet redirection of emotional energy elsewhere. Attentiveness is another hallmark of transparent emotional investment. It is expressed in the ability to notice details, remember past conversations, and respond in ways that demonstrate presence and awareness. Attentiveness requires effort and focus. It cannot be feigned over extended periods without betraying gaps in consistency. When someone withdraws emotionally, these small yet significant gestures begin to disappear. Recollections fade, responses become superficial, and engagement is noticeably absent. Stoicism encourages noting these patterns without immediate reaction, recognizing that consistent attentiveness or its absence reveals the reality of emotional priorities. Initiative is equally telling. Emotional investment drives action beyond mere obligation or convenience. Individuals who are deeply engaged take steps to nurture connection, contribute meaningfully, and maintain presence. They initiate conversations, create opportunities for shared experiences, and anticipate needs without being prompted. Withdrawal of initiative, in contrast, signals a retreat from investment. The effort that once appeared natural now diminishes or disappears entirely. Over time, repeated withdrawal is a quiet but unmistakable indicator that attention, energy, and emotional commitment are being redirected elsewhere. Observing this pattern allows one to discern intent with clarity without being misled by words alone. Stoicism teaches detachment and observation, allowing one to recognize emotional realities without reacting impulsively or emotionally. By focusing on transparency of behavior rather than the content of explanations, excuses, or reassurances, it becomes possible to see truth in repeated patterns of engagement or withdrawal. Emotional investment is rarely fully hidden. Even subtle shifts reveal where energy and priorities are truly directed. The cumulative effect of curiosity, attentiveness, and initiative creates a clear portrait of engagement. When these qualities are consistently present, they reflect genuine care and alignment of intention. When they fade, the withdrawal of emotional energy communicates distance in a quiet, unmistakable way. Words may attempt to bridge the gap, but consistent behavioral patterns tell the story more accurately than any verbal assurances. Transparency of emotional investment is thus revealed not in declarations, but in repeated actions that reflect alignment of focus and priority. Withdrawal, though subtle, is equally transparent and serves as an important signal of shifting attention or emerging distance. Recognizing these signs allows one to understand underlying realities objectively, appreciating that emotional engagement is inherently visible to those who observe with clarity and detachment, and that its absence speaks volumes without a single word being exchanged. Time is the ultimate currency, the one resource that cannot be replenished, borrowed, or faked. How someone chooses to spend it consistently and repeatedly is a clear reflection of their priorities and values. Words, promises, and intentions may create illusions of commitment, but time reveals the unvarnished truth. A Stoic perspective emphasizes careful observation of these allocations without judgment, recognizing that patterns and how attention is invested provide deep insight into evolving relationships and emerging dynamics. Where time is consistently directed, energy and focus inevitably follow, and where it is absent, the reality of shifting attention becomes apparent. Observing the allocation of time requires attentiveness to both quantity and quality. Quantity refers to how much time is devoted to particular people, projects, or activities, while quality reflects the depth of engagement within that time. A person may appear present superficially, but if their attention is divided, distracted, or disengaged, the quality of their time investment diminishes. Stoic observation prioritizes patterns over isolated events. One-off exceptions are irrelevant compared to consistent behaviors. Over weeks, months, or years, repeated choices reveal the true hierarchy of what someone values, even when their words claim otherwise. The consistent allocation of time signals priority without the need for explanation. Someone who dedicates significant portions of their day, attention, or emotional energy to a person or endeavor demonstrates that it matters to them. Conversely, repeated absence, neglect, or avoidance quietly communicates the opposite. The human mind naturally seeks to rationalize such absences, offering excuses or explanations, but Stoicism teaches detachment, observing the fact of where time is spent rather than interpreting the motive behind it. This disciplined observation allows clarity to emerge from repeated patterns, revealing the alignment or misalignment of priorities with reality. Time also illuminates evolving dynamics in relationships. Initial enthusiasm may fade, and sustained investment becomes the marker of genuine commitment. Someone may appear engaged during fleeting periods of excitement, but long-term dedication is revealed through consistent participation, attention, and presence. Where attention drifts over time, it is a subtle yet undeniable signal that focus, interest, or emotional energy is shifting elsewhere. Stoicism encourages noting these patterns analytically without being swept into emotional responses, understanding that repeated behavior is the most reliable indicator of evolving priorities. The transparency of time as a signal is compounded by the fact that it cannot be faked indefinitely. Messages, calls, or gestures can simulate presence, but genuine time investment requires conscious allocation of finite resources. It is impossible to give sustained attention, energy, and engagement to multiple competing priorities without some trade-off. Observing how someone balances these trade-offs reveals where their true focus lies. Those who consistently choose to spend time with for or on a relationship demonstrate alignment of intention, while those who repeatedly divert time elsewhere signal subtle shifts in commitment. Furthermore, time investment intersects with emotional and physical availability. Genuine attention manifests in shared experiences, thoughtful gestures, and consistent presence. In contrast, when time is allocated elsewhere, the withdrawal is visible not only in absence but in diminished engagement during the moments that do occur. Stoic observation emphasizes the cumulative effect. One isolated instance of absence may be insignificant, but patterns over time form a clear picture of intention, attention, and evolving alignment. Ultimately, priorities are revealed not in statements or promises, but in the consistent allocation of time. Time is finite, and the choices people make regarding how they spend it reflect the reality of their commitments, interests, and intentions. Observing these patterns with a Stoic mindset allows one to understand evolving relationships objectively, recognizing that the investment or withdrawal of time communicates far more truthfully than words, explanations, or reassurances ever could, and that where time consistently flows, priorities are transparently displayed. Behavior is the truest reflection of priorities and intentions, far more reliable than explanations, excuses, or rationalizations. Words can be persuasive, rehearsed, or self-serving, but repeated actions carry an authenticity that cannot be fabricated indefinitely. Stoicism emphasizes observing reality as it is, without attachment to comforting narratives or convenient explanations. Over time, patterns in behavior reveal the underlying truth about where attention, energy, and commitment are directed. While conversations may attempt to clarify, justify, or persuade, it is consistent behavior that ultimately communicates reality more clearly than any words could. Rationalizations are often offered to bridge the gap between action and intention. Someone may provide explanations for absence and attention, or unfulfilled commitments, framing their choices in a way that maintains appearances. These justifications, however, cannot alter the observable fact of how behavior unfolds over time. Stoicism teaches that reality is reflected in patterns, not in the stories told to soften it. By observing repeated actions, one can distinguish between what is said and what is done, recognizing that genuine intention is revealed through behavior, not through verbal defense. Excuses, similarly, attempt to obscure or redirect perception. A miscommitment might be explained as a one-time occurrence, or a lack of engagement framed as circumstantial. While each individual excuse may seem plausible, the cumulative effect of repeated behavior paints a different picture. Patterns cannot be erased by explanations, they accumulate as evidence over time. Someone who consistently fails to act in alignment with their words demonstrates, without ambiguity, where their priorities truly lie. A Stoic observer notes this accumulation without judgment, understanding that reality is inescapable when viewed through the lens of repeated actions. The transparency of behavior is amplified by its persistence. A single lapse may be insignificant, but repeated inconsistencies reveal underlying choices and shifting focus. Words may attempt to maintain the illusion of alignment, but actions sustained over days, weeks, and months speak with clarity that cannot be matched. Initiatives that are not followed through, promises that remain unfulfilled, and attention that is repeatedly diverted are all behavioral markers that point to reality. Stoicism emphasizes detachment in observing these patterns, recognizing that clarity comes from acknowledging what is, rather than being swayed by what is said. Observing patterns over time provides insight into evolving dynamics that conversations alone cannot deliver. While dialogue may temporarily smooth over discrepancies or offer explanations, behavior forms the cumulative record of commitment and attention. For instance, repeated absence, lack of follow-through, or diminished engagement communicates a shift in priorities that cannot be countered by verbal reassurances. The consistency or inconsistency of actions forms an unambiguous narrative, revealing truth that words may attempt to obscure but cannot erase. Behavior also communicates intention in ways that words cannot fully capture. Emotional investment, initiative, and attentiveness manifest through consistent action. When these qualities are absent, withdrawal is evident regardless of explanations offered. Patterns in behavior provide a roadmap for understanding where energy is truly directed and how priorities are allocated. Stoic observation allows one to see these realities without becoming entangled in the emotional weight of rationalizations, focusing instead on the objective clarity that actions provide. Ultimately, behavior outlasts explanation because actions accumulate evidence over time. Words can attempt to persuade, justify, or explain, but repeated patterns cannot lie. Observing these patterns with patience and detachment allows one to discern truth and reality in a way that conversation alone cannot achieve. Over time, clarity emerges naturally from sustained observation, revealing where focus, attention, and intention genuinely reside, and demonstrating that the reality of choices is embedded in repeated behavior rather than in temporary verbal reassurances.